how the mainstream science is giving us false information and keeping us in the dark. So if we are true scientists, we need to ask questions. We need to look for the answers. And even if we don't find them, it doesn't mean that our search is over. On the contrary. So yes, there are many civilizations. So I would totally agree that civilizations like Lemuria and the others were people or intelligent beings that are much more spiritual and less physical. Well, it's becoming very clear to me that we have had several, actually rather great number of different civilizations on this planet. In some cases, we can talk about the episodes. For example, Easter Island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, 4,000 kilometers away from Chile, 5,000 from Tahiti. On this island, small volcanic island in the middle of nowhere, you have those Maori, huge figures, humans, half body up. The biggest one is 175 tons. It's done beautifully. And when you listen to the guide over there, he's showing pieces of volcanic stone. They said, okay, they use this as a tool. You cannot use the same material to shape the same material. You have to have superior tools. And they never found it. So it was some type of the laser technology. Then you have stone spheres from volcanic stones. Obviously, those ancients, they knew the power of shape. The most powerful shapes, the pyramid, conical, and spherical. You put spheres above energy potent place, they amplify the energy. And then you can find megalithic walls on that small island. So it looks to me, somebody landed, spent some rather short period of time, did all the stonework, and left. They even have a writing, letters which is called Rongo Rongo. And all other islands around it, they have nothing. No stonework, stone spheres, no letters, no communication, nothing. So for me, it is some type of the episode. When it comes to Göbekli Tepe, at first, it looked to me it was an episode also. But the amount of those megalithic circles, even though only 6 of them have been exposed, it seems that, and Dr. Schmidt told me, while he was alive 11 years ago, that there are probably 100 of them. And what they teach us in schools, like when people started with the agriculture, they had a lot of food, they had some extra values, that they could start building those megalithic structures. Really, agriculture officially has not started until 5,000 years back. So if you go back to Tepe, it's 12 or 13,000 years. What are we talking about? The nomadic people, they had nothing else to do, so they started building huge temples, megaliths, circles, blocks, 10, 12, 6 tons in weight, perfectly shaped from extremely hard limestone material? Of course not. It was somebody else. And when they are saying big agricultural societies, civilizations, 50, 100,000 people, well, logically, maybe. But in the case of Göbekli Tepe, after 20 years of research, they have not found any residential areas. So instead of 100,000 people, we have hundreds of megalithic circles, some of them as big as Stonehenge, but no people. So who did it and why? Well, in that particular case, Göbekli Tepe, I was the only and the first foreigner who actually did some energy measurements showing it was not a temple, it was not for the burial site, it was also energy amplifier that would focus the energy. Stonehenge, the same thing. Avery stone circles, 3 big circles. The level of orgone energy, extremely high. What is the orgone energy? Very often it is referred as the life energy, or prana, or chi. And when we were here 5-6 years back, we also brought the number of instruments, measurements, and level of orgone energy on some places here in Damanhur was also extremely high. As a matter of fact, some places it works on a scale from 0 to 100. Some places were like 45 or 50%. And humans are from 45 to 100%. So they are literally alive. Everything is alive. If we start looking at different ways, everything has its own vibrations. Water, of course, but stone and mineral kingdom in general is alive. They don't teach us that in schools. And everything has its own energy properties. And again, when we were doing measurements here in Damanhur, it was December 22nd, of course during the procession, during the winter solstice, while your people were coming and chanting and doing your stuff, then we use a special camera to scan the energies. This is called VIP camera, developed by our late friend Dr. Harry Oldfield. We could see the change of the colors, and the energy fields formed the dome. And then the colors went to higher vibrating colors, meaning whatever you were doing, whatever thoughts you had, whatever processions you are showing there, it was affecting the energy field in a very positive way. So even though we cannot rely on our five physical senses, they are so limited, you still have some instruments that can measure. And if you can measure, you can scientifically prove. And finally, let me answer your question. Of course, I don't know everything. My knowledge is so modest. After 40-something years of pyramid research, I can truly say I know almost nothing about the pyramids. I don't know who built the Egyptian pyramids. We can speculate, we can argue, it was King Tut, it was this guy, that guy. We actually don't know 100%. Unless we find writing, me, Pharaoh, so-and-so, I built the pyramids, or me, God, so-and-so. But what I can say is that when it comes to civilizations like Atlantis, and of course there was a land between Europe and North America, not only one small continent or huge island, at least 400 by 200 kilometers. But until 54,000 years back, there were two huge islands, but they were both of the volcanic origin. And the volcanic islands, they are very sensitive. If they got hit, then they can move up or down. It's been happening even today. And it seems that 54,000 years ago, there were some huge explosions, and then one of those islands, the one to the north, sunk. The one in the middle remained. And it seems that there are, for me, at least 3 phases of this civilization. Most probably 55,000 years back, and then 18,500, and until the last flood, 11,700. And then, based on some other scientific arguments, you can see that island did exist. Now, the thing is, this island is now 3,520 meters below the sea level, so it's almost impossible for our technology to go there and to try to find some pyramids or other structures. But once we realize, yes, it has to be different civilization. The work of people like Elder Casey, who had 12,000 readings about the island, of people giving such a vivid information about the last phase of the Atlantis, and some others. I think that's very important step, and eventually I think we will find scientific means to prove that civilization and to prove some other. For example, there is a new science called anthropological genetics that investigates our genes. Back in 1990s, there were a number of independent institutes, and they were trying to do the research about the origin of every cultural oasis or every nation on the planet. And look what they discovered. The same haplogroup was from people in western and northern Spain called Basques. And they are the oldest cultural oasis in Europe, 55,000 years. And then the same haplogroup, Berbers, in northern Africa, different continent. And the same one in the central Amazon, in Brazil. And the same one in Guatemala, descendants of the Mayans. So 4 continents, 4 haplogroups. What's missing? The distribution center, which was right in the middle, Atlantis. And then, second one, well, by the way, second oldest cultural oasis in Europe are the people from Balkan region. And guess what? From Bosnia.
From Bosnia.
70% of us are actually there for 38,000 years. So we're not newcomers, Slavic people, 7th century, no, we've been there tens of thousands of years. The next thing which really caught my attention, you know how they are telling us that people are going from Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, and then to the right to Ural, and then Siberia, and then through the Bering Strait, to North America, coming down to Middle and South America. This is what they are telling us. They said those movements was happening 10, 11,000 years ago, while still the ice was there, so there was ice bridge. But then they found the same haplogroup in India and Ecuador. What does that mean? It means that people at that time were going through the number of islands from basically Southern Asia, through Indian Ocean, to South America. Not like they are telling us 10, 11,000 years ago, 50-something thousand years back. And really, when you come to Machu Picchu, which is in eastern Peru, you know, they are telling us, okay, it was a royal retreat for ancient Incas, 800 years back. Every guide will tell you the same thing, every encyclopedia. And then you go there and you look for yourself. You can see 4 distinctive construction styles belonging to 4 different civilizations. The first one are huge megalithic blocks reaching 250 tons. And they are, according to the physical and chemical analysis, they are not from Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu means, you know, old mountain. But from Bolivia, 150 kilometers away. Who moved block of 250 tons from Bolivia to eastern Peru? Even today, it would be almost impossible. It would be a logistic nightmare for our civilization because there are no roads. You know, when you go from Cusco, you go by train, you don't go by roads. So, 250 tons. And most of those big blocks, they are polygonal. Not 4 corners, 4 sides, but 6, 8, or 10. The second civilization, they were using smaller blocks, tens of tons, still huge. Again, polygonal. The third civilization, they were like ancient Romans, 500 kilos to 2 tons. 4-sided, regular, like you purchase them from the factory. And then thousands of years passed. The new civilization came, Incas. They rediscovered lost, forgotten city on the top of Peruvian Andes. And then what they did, they came in the small rocks, primitive rocks, and they separated those huge walls, building little chambers, putting the primitive roofs, and this is where they were bringing their royals. So, again, instead of the evolution, we have totally opposite process. It seems to me that the first civilization goes back to 50-something thousand years ago. And then the second one, and the third one, and the fourth one is actually the most primitive. And indeed, when the Spaniards came at the beginning of the 16th century, the first quarter of the 16th century, they were talking to Incas. They were talking, okay, in Cusco, who built these walls? Sacsayhuaman, who built those huge walls, those big blocks, who built Machu Picchu? They said, we don't know. Well, if they claim that they were built in the 15th century, there are still people living in the 16th century who were born, 20 or 40, 50 years before that. So you can see how the mainstream science is giving us false information and keeping us in the dark. So if we are true scientists, we need to ask questions. We need to look for the answers. And even if we don't find them, it doesn't mean that our search is over. On the contrary. So yes, there are many civilizations. So I would totally agree that civilizations like the Muria and the others were people or intelligent beings that are much more spiritual and less physical. Because physical, we are really at the bottom right now of the development when it comes to our consciousness. Of course, technology is very high, but consciousness does not follow the technology. That's why we're going to have huge problems in the near future. But obviously, before it was different. Being spiritually very developed, they obtained the knowledge from the different, not physical, but from the spiritual realms. And they learn how to shape, without using diamond tools, how to transport, without using our transportation means, like cranes or forklifts, how to build, how to apply the elements of sacred geometry. They knew the power of coarse crystals to amplify the energy, to transform the energy. They knew all of that because they were getting much more advanced knowledge from different sources. And are some of those civilizations from out of this planet? Let's put it this way. There are several different aspects. They could be from out of this planet. They could be from the inner planet, inside, and they could be from different dimensions, beings that we cannot see because they vibrate differently. Who are we to say that we are the only intelligent being in the universe, and that what we see, that's only that is? What we can see, and you know that, Croto, is just those 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Of course, those 7 colors have been kidnapped today by LGBTIQ movement. But scientifically, this is what we can see. And this is 0.7% of the whole visible universe.
Yes, exactly.
Cats or dogs who can see more. They can see orbs, they can see souls, they can see spirits, probably they can see some extraterrestrials. We cannot. But if you cannot, it doesn't mean that they don't exist.
Exactly. With all this evidence, Semir, so in your opinion, which is going to be the smoking gun that finally will tell, look, whatever we know about history and the classical archaeology is being probably the biggest fake news that we've been all brought in?
I mean, fake news in history all the time. You go to the most southern point in Egypt, Nubian land, Abu Simbel, famous temple. They all assigned this temple to Ramses II, maybe the most famous Egyptian pharaoh. They say it was built by him because you can see cartouche on the arm of 4 statues. But when you look closely, you can see that those 4 statues are actually showing 4 different people. They were made in such a superior way, which during the Ramses II time, which is 3,300 years back, was not possible. Why did he do that? He lost the war to Hittite as a young pharaoh, and then he ordered all his artists to go to every temple and put his cartouche so the future will remember him as the biggest builder ever. The fake news. Now, you ask me when the official science will finally starting to accept the real history. When you go back to 1967, Erich von Däniken, Chariots of Gods, that was so important because he said, hey, mainstream science is giving this explanation, and I'm doing another one. It doesn't matter if he was right or not with the aliens, because Däniken is excellent researcher, but he understands. But he started influencing the global consciousness. People are saying, hey, maybe this is not the truth. Maybe this guy has right. Or maybe there is a third option. And finally, when we started finding places like Yonaguni monuments, these are archaeological sites on the bottom of the Pacific floor between Japan, Taiwan, and China. 13 underwater cities, up to 80 meters below the sea level. At one time, they're on the surface. When? During the Ice Age, because ice was keeping so much water. Somebody built huge structures in granite. You can see the stairs, you can see the marketplaces, you can see the temples. And then we have, of course, Adam's calendar in South Africa. We're going back tens of thousands, or like our friend Michael Tellinger is saying, maybe even 200,000 years. Stone circles in Zimbabwe, in Swaziland, in Namibia, in South Africa. Then we have Baalbek. We have blocks reaching 1,450 tons, perfectly rectangular. Who moved them? What technology? But somebody did. Today, we cannot move them more than 20 meters because our biggest cranes in China, they can move from one side to another one. They cannot go 1.5 kilometers to the top of the hill where the rest of those blocks are forming the walls there. Then I mentioned Machu Picchu. Teotihuacan, Egyptian pyramids. They are not 2,000 years in Mexico or 4,500 years in Egypt. They are much, much older. Of course, Göbekli Tepe was a shock to the mainstream community, 11,600. Even if it is 11,600, not 15 or 18,000, like Dr. Schmidt was telling me, it's a shock. And finally, the Bosnian Pyramids. But the beauty of the Bosnian Pyramids is that this is totally independent project. There is no one to tell us what to say. All other archaeologists, historians, museums, they cannot say nothing, no press release, unless approved. By who? Mostly by English elites, but also German and American. Not in our case. That's why, still you can see that the mainstream, sources like Wikipedia, Encyclopedia Britannica, Smithsonian, National, they're all against us because we changed the narrative. In the beginning, you were asking me about discoveries. When you come with the new ideas, there is always resistance. But when you come with the huge, revolutionary ideas, huge obstacles in front of you, the hardest is to do the pioneering work. This is exactly what Damanhur was doing in their own sense back in 1970s and 80s and 90s. And today you are established. And even though today there are some resistance, but you have your place. In our case, first couple of years, everybody and his brother were trying to stop us, mocking us, attacking us. But we knew where we are heading to. We would say that everything they are saying, insults and stuff, are irrelevant. What would be relevant if we send our samples to 7 institutes of our concrete? They all say it's artificially made. Well, if you want to argue with us, we'll give you sample. You go to your institute. Let them prove that it is not artificially made. If we are saying there is an energy beam on top of the pyramid, bring your oscilloscope or EM meter or whatever you measure and say, oh, there is nothing. Oh, there is different frequency. If you are saying they're not perfectly oriented, bring your total station. You measure. They don't do that. They don't have scientific arguments. So, when you have just one place, it can be considered anomaly. But if you have several places on every continent, those anomalies, they become the facts. People are not stupid. Once they see that, they're going to put pressure in schools, the history books to be changed. You know what? In Norway, we've been having a lot of people from Norway coming to Bosnian Pyramids. In some elementary schools, they talk about the Bosnian Pyramids being 30,000 years old.
That's good.
So it's coming independently. So eventually, it's going to become generally accepted view.
Now, that is obviously the hope, because everybody deserves to have finally a different idea of what is life, evolution, what is, again, the expression of life in this different expression or modality. So I believe, Semir, what you've been doing is much more than just spreading an idea, but it's really giving a practical example that we can live archaeology in the everyday life, discovering outside what is not only the history of the humankind, but the history of each of us. And seeing what you did in Visoko, watching you not only discovering the pyramid, the tunnels, all these different measurements, but also creating an amazing park. The park is definitely a great inspiration for us because you've been doing not only something beautiful, but a real inspiration for anyone that can come in this park. And by the way, I just wanted to say the park is totally free. That is another amazing thing. And how refined, how beautiful, how welcoming is your place, it is pretty amazing. And obviously, we see analogy between the Damanhur work that it is again to inspire, to bring people to change their logic, to change their approach. The idea of Falco, that actually you knew very well, our founder, so the idea to constantly inspire people to find their mission, their spiritual mission. So the park, as I said, is a great, great inspiration for all of us. And I believe it is an even stronger connection, like to see a bridge between Visoko and Damanhur. So how you see the development of this beautiful project for the future?
Thank you for nice words and compliments. You know, 2 decades ago, we started as the archaeological project. And then we realized that archaeology is simply not enough to explain what we have in front of us. That's why we expanded to many scientific disciplines. And then we discovered the energy aspect, which is measurable. And then spiritual aspect, not in the sense of religions or being religious, spiritual in the sense of development of your spiritual senses, development of your awareness. And then the next one was healing aspect, because the pyramid energy, when you're exposed to, it starts the regeneration process. Your body cells, without any harmful radiations coming from the outside, cosmic radiations, from natural radioactivity, from geopathogenic radiations, from signals from the cell phones or Wi-Fi and so on, some good energies, the highest concentration of beneficial negative ions in the world, they made this combination, and the tunnels are the safest and the healthiest place on the planet. So healing aspect. And then like it was not enough, I spent all my US savings, I spent 25 years in Houston, Texas. I purchased almost 100,000 years of muddy, neglected, swampy land. And in a couple of years, with the excellent team of my associates and my workers, we transformed it into one of the most beautiful parks in Europe. It has become a cultural oasis of the region, sports oasis, artistic oasis, the place with the labyrinths of love, labyrinths of energy, labyrinths of purification, labyrinth of health, the time machine, 24 columns with 24 mysterious archaeological sites around the world. With the sports complex, the tennis stadium was inaugurated with the best tennis player ever, Novak Djokovic. And we'll see if Sinner's going to match that in 10 or 15 years. And then we have beach volleyball and basketball and chess. And we have discovered 4 entrances to the tunnels in the area of the park. We have such beautiful installations which show some of the forgotten figures from our history, from Illyrian times, from medieval times, and so on. So we combine the art and the history. And with yoga, with meditations, with the concerts, and you are right, everything is for free in this park. Entrance is for free. If it was in Germany, it would be like 20 or 50 euros. Parking is for free. We spent a lot of money to build the parking spots. And all our concerts are for free. I mean, we are paying those superstars from Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, 10,000 euros. We pay for sound, we pay for the speakers, for the lights, for security, for this and that. But we are giving it for free to the locals, to the community, to the guests. You know, I've learned a couple of things. We are born free. It's our cosmic and divine right. And as soon as we are born, they are giving us vaccines, not asking us. They are telling us as we are growing, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. When we are becoming 18 or 21 years old, the law forbids this, for always limitations. I want to bring sense of freedom to people. That's why everything's for free there. And the second thing I learned, since I spent so many years, 25 years in the US, it's the civilization based on consumerism. Work, have a bigger salary, so you are able to get a bigger loan, and then you can buy a bigger house, and bigger car, and bigger this, and bigger. So always pressure, buy. And then what? You get into 60s, 70s, and 80s, you turn around, what have I achieved? Have I been really happy? Have I been fulfilled? Of course not. What I've learned is when you give, when you share, when you serve the community, then it gives you this sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. And when you were there, you saw, we walked the park, people are coming to me from different countries, from Germany, from Norway, from Bulgaria, from Croatia. And they are telling me, they are not telling me, oh, you did a good job here. They are telling me, thank you for doing this for humanity. Because they recognize that places like this are the future. And when we see they are telling us, what are the new Western values? Transhumanism, upgraded human with biochip under the skin, food trash, or GMO food as they call it, pedophiles being legalized, digital money, 24 hours controlled and manipulated. We are saying no. The future of humanity or one of the futures, is the concept that we are building, the free man. Harmony among us, not the social distance. The true meaning of social distance is every man is your potential enemy. Just say no. Harmony. We need to shake our hands. We need to hug each other. We need to kiss each other. This is our true, social purpose. So harmony among us and harmony in the nature. And obviously, us and you guys over here work on the common goal, and that will at the end produce the rise, the lift of the global consciousness.
That's beautiful. And it looks really a program for the future of the humankind. And it's been a pleasure and an honor to bring one of our stone spiral, built together with you and your team and your people over there on Stone Spiral as a sign of connection between the Bosnian Pyramid and Damanhur. And the idea for us then to bring groups and people that after discovering Damanhur, they can discover another practical experience. Because I believe that people, they need practical examples. They just don't need to have nice concept, nice idea, but to see that it's possible to be different, that it's possible still to create beautiful places, where it's possible to inspire others despite their religion, their color of the skin, or their culture. And as I said before, you are doing in a country that is being crossed by a lot of very challenging, difficult moments and a lot of suffering. So you create a small paradise, at least for everyone that is a free thinker, as you are, as we are, and as I'm sure everyone is watching us is as well. There are people that are making it happen. So thank you, Semir. Thank you for everything you're doing, to you, to your partner Sabina, to your team. It is a great inspiration to see what you're doing in this part of the world.
Excellent.
So, for the next time.
Thank you.
Conte.